You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Jordan Rollins Duncans.
Duncan. It's just
Duncan.
not plural.
not Dunkin' Donuts?
No.
So, Jordan, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a writer, a podcaster, and a mom. I'm from Alabama, but I've lived in a few coastal cities in the U.S. And my husband is a nurse in the military, so that takes us to a bunch of places. And that's pretty. Oh, I'm a cat mom and a human mom. You can probably hear my cat. I'm sorry if that's.
So, wait, is being a mother what you do professionally?
No.
So
But professionally, I'm a writer and a podcaster.
So, what types of things do you write about?
Well, mostly fiction and poetry.
Ooh, I'm actually an avid poet writer myself.
Oh, really?
What types of things do you write about, at least in poetry?
My life. I write about stuff that has happened to me, and it's most of my poetry is inspired by bad stuff that's happened to me.
Emotional experiences, for sure.
Like trauma things and breakup stuff. I don't really have a whole lot of happy poems.
I feel like that's with a lot of poetry, though. It seems like it always is either really, really detailed descriptions of like scenery, or it is a type of like it's a stress relief, mostly like from emotional tension. You know, when I write about poetry, when I do stuff, I talk about like, it'll be 2:00 in the morning and I'll open up my window when a rain's happening outside, and it talks about like how people are completely oblivious of the world going on around them. Things that I think on a deeper level. And, I mean, I don't want to read from my poetry book. I usually never even say I even do poetry, just on the concept of, you get made fun of if you're a guy writing poetry. But, I had I have a bunch of poems, like one's called Global Reconciliation, Stability. And I was like, the basis of education leading to logic's evaluation followed a life with structure, money a word for life's secret lover. And like, just like stuff like that. Like there's something you get when you don't have any sleep, and then it's 2:00 in the morning, you just start writing stuff down.
Oh, definitely. That's funny that you say no sleep, because maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years ago, I was prescribed Ambien to try to help me sleep because I have some sleep issues, and it didn't work for me, and I would end up doing weird stuff. I don't know if you've heard like of the weird things people do sometimes when they're on Ambien. I would like take it as prescribed, but I would wake up and write poems and then not know anything about it, end up back in my bed, and then get up the next day and see that I had written all this stuff. And some of it was gibberish and made no sense, but some of it was actually kind of good, in my opinion, anyway. It was that I think that that dreams and whatever it is that the human brain is going through when it first wakes up can be really inspiring.
That's why people keep a dream journal. It's really important. Like if you ever have a certain nightmare, they talk about fixing that nightmare by writing down, the stuff that stood out in the nightmare that scared you, jumble it down so you don't forget it, and then look back at it later and think what those might mean. Because usually your dreams have a deeper inflection into what's going on subconsciously with you. Like if you
Yeah.
go to sleep hungry, don't be surprised when you have a dream about food, you know?
Mhm.
And like it's crazy to see because I'm fascinated with the human mind, just the creative amount of things that people can do, experiences people can have, emotional responses to things. I mean, the fact that you can smell a certain like smell in the air and be linked to a memory from long ago, you know,
Yeah.
like
Mm.
it's crazy to see that. Like, do you have a fascination for poetry, like reading your own poetry?
I don't really like to read my own. I think that it's crap. but
Well, that's
but
like that with everybody. I'm pretty like
yeah,
Leonardo da Vinci thought all of his things were crap. He thought
yeah,
art is never finished, just left
that blows
unfinished.
my mind.
Yeah. And for like you, like what's some of your biggest influences? My favorite poem would have to be Those Winter Sundays by
Mm.
Robert Frost. Like
Oh yeah.
that brings such like a image to my head because like reading a book, I'm sitting there like, all right, I'd rather watch the movie. But then I'm like reading this poem and it's talking about the cold frost cracking on the windshield, or not the windshield, the window,
Mhm.
being in bed, not wanting to get up and just curled up in this cozy kind of spot. And I've remembered those moments.
I think most of my inspiration comes from music rather than poets. I do read a lot of poets, but most of what gets I don't know how to describe it. What gets me writing is usually music, and then I don't know. I think that my style is a little bit less refined and not, I think, what people consider to be real poetry. Like, you know, how there's different styles and there's different like ways, and
Yeah, A B
some
A
people
B and
have
all
a
that.
meter, and I just sort of write down what my feelings are, or whatever needs to come out, and then I don't do a whole lot of editing on it. I just leave it. And
I get it.
I
It's raw. It's raw though.
mhm,
That's what I
yeah,
like about it. Like for me, I kind of do the monopause like, and here's what the bunny did, and then
right.
it left this place where it lived, and it's like
Mhm,
that end word always has to rhyme. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
it's when you write something down, if it's what like if it's even if it's poetry is just about putting emotion. Creativity is about
Mhm,
emotion. It's about putting something into something. When you hear someone play a song, you can tell if they truly mean the song. Like if you ever are in a depressive slump and you play Alice in Chains, like Man in a Box, like
mhm,
you can tell that singer is like, this is how I'm feeling right now. Like
yeah.
he's got the emotional sense in his voice, like that connectivity. And you don't see that nowadays. You see
It
music that gets played and it's just trendy. It's not even something you can relate to. It's not something that has emotion in it. It's just some dude yelling about having 600 white Benzes. I'm like, well, I don't own fucking 600 white Benzes, so I can't help you there.
I think, when something's too edited, its it loses the passion that was initially there. So I don't like to edit it too much. Even if it's not perfect, I just leave it how it is because I go back and will do like punctuation and proper spelling and that kind of stuff. But other than that, I mostly leave things how they are, which a lot of poets did not do that. I guess to convey more of like an art form, and would work for weeks on the same poem, but I just don't do that. That's just not my style. And I don't know. I just like to kind of spit it out, and that's what it is, and whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I like all different types of poetry. I like all different types of music, but what what I do is just what I do, and I've experimented with other things, and I've tried other ways, and like I have done where I extensively edited something, but then I ended up hating it. Like when I can just spit it out and it is what it is, I think I like it more because I remember the way I felt when I wrote it, and
Well,
I feel like
this
it
is a
leaves more of
problem
an
with
impact.
this is a
Sorry.
problem with monetizing. See, the fact is, when you start trying to change something, thinking that this is what someone else is going to like, you lose the originality of why you created it in the first place.
Mhm.
Like, if it doesn't have impact to somebody, then they truly don't appreciate it. Like, when I see something that somebody written and actually put their heart in, even if I don't like it, I give it credit because you didn't adopt it to someone else's needs or someone else's wants. You wrote down how you were feeling, what you felt in that moment, and that's passion in itself, you know.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for anybody that at least writes poetry or reads poetry would understand that interpretation of that, would understand the power of emotion, you know. I went to one of those what do you call it, the jazz meets, with the talking poetry, the poetry
Mhm.
slam type stuff, like people running around with their hair. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why don't we just get up and speak about things? We all have things on our mind. We all have things that basically think around the same basis. There are some differences when it comes to what we want to do with our lives, but when it comes to how we're all functioning in this world, we all kind of structure ourselves around the same thought. Like, we're too afraid to be ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, how did you go from writing poetry and doing these types of things to doing a podcast called Heinous Hotels about like true crime and stuff? Like, can you explain to me your podcast?
Okay, so Heinous Hotels is sort of a little bit of a passion project of mine. It sort of started out because my friends, they weren't getting annoyed with me, but they were close to getting annoyed with me because I used to read stuff. Well, I still do this actually. I'm not going to lie. I would read facts on like Wikipedia or in books or whatever, and then even if it was like 4:30 in the morning, I would screenshot it or take a picture of the passage of the book or whatever, and immediately send it to my friends and be like, "Oh my gosh, you'll never guess what I just read. This is insane. Listen to this." And it would almost always be something weird that happened in a hotel, like somebody was killed in a hotel in a weird way and it's still unsolved, or like this really famous person did this crazy thing in this hotel, and now there's a plaque in there and you
I
can
w-
go to the hotel and visit it and that kind of stuff. I love that.
I work at a hotel, and the past 3 years I've been there, I think I've witnessed, or I've been around, I think 3 to 4 deaths.
Hmm.
um People, we have a lot of elderly people that stay during wintertime, so I'll be like
Oh,
working and I'll see an ambulance out front. I'm like, oh, someone had a heart attack, and the next thing you know,
oh
it's like someone
goodness.
actually died in the bathtub.
Oh
And like,
no.
I remember one really, really crazy one. So apparently someone, I guess either like killed themselves or something. Like tied a bunch of sheets around their neck and they jumped off the thing while tying it to the balcony.
Oh
And
no.
my job as a houseman is to strip the room of all trash and all
Hmm.
sheets. So
Yeah.
I go into this room, and I guess they hadn't blocked it off yet, or hadn't put up tape. Like, cops haven't came yet. It was just the ambulance. And
Hmm.
so I strip the whole room and I'm done. And a cop stops me as I'm leaving. He's like, "Did you just go in there?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That was going to be like evidence. We needed to kind of look through that." And I was like, "What do you mean
Oh
evidence?" And they're like,
no.
"Oh, a woman just killed themselves in this room." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, they have to investigate it probably
yeah,
and
I
make
just,
sure it was really a suicide or not murder or whatever.
you know how fucking weird I felt after that? I was
Oh
sitting there
my
like, I just threw
gosh.
away like everything. Like, I hope you guys aren't searching for a murderer because my fingerprints are all over this damn place."
Right.
And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh. Did
and
you
what?
ever find out what happened?
Oh, it's just it was like a 20-something-year-old person that ended up getting like really upset and depressed, and ended up just
Oh
kind of,
my
yeah,
gosh.
it's
That's
sad, but it's like
sad.
it happens. Like, it's really weird working at a hotel because they do this thing. Um, where there's like, have you ever seen the ghost of this person? And because we live in like an old style hotel, and
Mhm.
I'm like, I've had like, there's some people have talked about seeing a ghost, like an older woman looking for a child, and I'm
Oh
like,
my
see, I
god.
believe in paranormal and supernatural stuff to a
Me
point, but
too.
I know this ghost is fake because I've talked to my buddy used to manage the whole entire hotel, and he goes, "Yeah, we actually pay somebody, an older woman, to come in here asking to look," but has everybody else in full
No.
belief. And like for me, I'm usually working when this woman shows up, and I've had a woman come up to me and go, "Have you seen a little girl?" And I'm like so tired after working all day. I'm like, honestly, I don't even know. Like
I'm in on
I'm waiting
it.
till it's time to punch out right now. Like that's all is my response. And like everyone's like freaking out, like wondering, like, I swear to God, it's like acting like really dramatic. And I'm like, look, I have seen things I can't explain. I've been able to do stuff I can't explain, but this is not one of them. I'm sorry. I'm
Right.
it's it's really, really weird because like, you know, death is a strange thing a lot of people can't handle. And
Mhm.
especially knowing that death might not be the end, death might be just a part, like you might go into a spiritual plane. Like, are you in belief of ghosts and all these types of things?
Oh, yeah, I definitely believe in something. I don't know if I believe 100% in life after death, but I believe that we have energy, and energy doesn't go away, it just gets transferred. And my dad, before he passed away, he always believed that heaven and hell and all that, the afterlife, is another dimension rather than like when you're a little kid and you think heaven is above the clouds or whatever, and you think that hell is like under the ground. He always brought me up to believe that it was not up or down or where whatever like that. It was a different dimension that we can't see, and that ghosts and spirits or whatever um, are energies that have been able to maybe find a thin space in between the dimension that we can see and the dimension where the soul's energy has gone, I guess.
So do you
And
want to
I
hear
don't.
my theory that I think it basically hits onto yours? I think you know
Yeah.
how people can see like ghosts and things. I
Hmm.
think people have a different frequency they're turned into, like tuned
Yeah.
into, like a radio. Okay, like there's channel one, channel two, channel three. If there is a signal beaming from my laptop up into outer space right now that's invisible to my eyes, but
Hmm.
it's there, it's relevant. It's actually probably going through my hand as I hold it over my laptop, but if that's a different frequency, people have been known to see sounds, like be able
Hmm.
to see them with their eyes, like notes flying in the air after being strummed from a guitar. So maybe people are just tuned into a different frequency. I never
Yeah.
truly understood that reference, like that I kind of developed in my head until like, my mom talked about like my grandma being able to see spirits and my mom being able to do it herself. And I'm like listening to it like, okay, all right, whatever. Yeah, we just
Hmm.
watched Ghost Whisperer. I know what you're about. You know what I mean? And then
Uh-huh.
there was a little girl around the time I was like 9 or like I don't remember how young I was, but went missing.
Oh
And
no.
my mom came up to my dad. My dad's not a paranormal believer at all, and was like, "Hey, I need you to call this into the cops right now. This is where the little girl is." And they've been looking for a body at this point. And my dad's like, "What?" And my mom's like, "I'm dead serious right now. Call it in
Holy
anonymously and
cow.
hang up." My dad did, and they found the girl.
Oh my word.
Exactly where my mom said it was.
She had died?
The girl had died, yeah, but
Oh
my
my
mom's like, "I got
god.
a dream," and my dad became a paranormal and supernatural believer after this, was
Whoa.
the fact that she had a dream, a little girl coming up to her, like, seeing the girl's face, knowing the girl's name, and all the girl said was, "Help my parents find my body," and then
Oh my
that's
god.
my mom's interpretation, so I don't know
Wow.
what that is, but I've also experienced where I've been, I used to get deja vu really bad as a kid,
Mhm.
and I've talked to people that have psychic abilities or whatever you want to believe. Um,
Mhm.
and am I in full belief of it myself? But I don't know because I'm telling you, there's a bunch of shit I think about the human brain that is left to be understood.
Mhm.
I've talked to people that think that all psychic abilities lie dormant inside of us all, but the people that are empathic, like I'm known as, my mom calls it, an empath, being
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
like, I can walk by somebody and sense like a little bit of like who they are, like if they're a good person or a bad person. And I mean, I can't sleep at times because I can feel what my neighbor's feeling. I know if my neighbor had a bad day, I can sense it through my fucking wall. And like she tries to give me books on it. I'm just not open into it. And it really boggled my mind one time when I woke up from a really strong dream and I went downstairs and I was like, I just had this really, really weird dream. I saw this guy laying in a canal, like a channel,
Oh
and
my
I
god.
don't know, like I don't know
That
what
would
this
scare
meant.
me.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't know what this meant. It was like a nightmare. It was just so freaky. I was like just trying to eat at the same time. So I was like, It was just a nightmare. It'll go away." And then my mom's like, "Can you do me a quick favor?" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "I'm going to show you a photo. I want you to see if this is the guy you dreamt." And I said, "Okay." She showed me a photo. I was like, "That's him." And she goes, "Where was he?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I explained what I saw. And they ended up finding some dude a couple days later.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I don't know how to explain that. Maybe that was just a freak thing. But I've also had a dream where I've lost a loved one, like I lost my childhood dog of like 17
Yeah.
years basically. And I remember like it was like 2 years later after she died that I had a dream where I was like with her. And I don't know if that was my memory trying to cope with something, but it was like
Mhm.
weird. And I was like, I woke up and I was like tearing up. I was like, that was the strongest thing ever. Like that was like
Mhm.
getting hit in the groin. Like I literally I could never picture a dream being that impactful. But then I started researching heavily into sleep, like why I never get sleep. Why does my buddy sleep with his eyes open? Why are all these types of things happening? Why does it feel like you're when you're sleeping and you suddenly jerk awake, like you feel like you just fell?
Oh, I hate that. I hate that feeling.
That's called a hypnic jerk, but I started looking up the science behind it, and it's like a hypnic jerk happens when your body hits its 3rd cycle of REM sleep, and
Mhm.
it's like your most recovery sleep, but your heart rate gets so low, your brain thinks you're dying, so it tries to wake you up like that.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, I hear that, I was like, this gave me this really weird theory, and I kinda want you to listen and hear me out on it.
Okay.
So, they talk about alternate dimensions, different types of like different parts in time and all these types of things.
Mhm.
Like, I think so. Rapid eye movement, when you're sleeping, it's your eyes, your eyes are shut, but your eyes are still moving around under your eyelids, constantly going around, zigzagging back and forth.
Mhm.
Now, I think your dreams might be like a doorway into another dimension or another kind of like universe in a way, at least in your own mind. But that's what your REM sleep is. Like the rapid eye movement, it's your
Mhm.
brain searching for a doorway to hop through, which is going to be your dream.
That's really interesting. I've heard some similar theories before, um, but I don't know. I I think that it depends really. If you have some sort of like psychic sensitivities or like empathic ability or something like that, then I think yeah. I mean, there's so much that we don't know about dreams that I mean anything could be possible, but I know that some people say that spirits try to communicate, especially to like loved ones and stuff
Their
in
dreams.
dreams. And some people see the future in dreams, um,
Well,
and
it's called
have
deja
visions.
vu. And
Yeah.
deja vu is actually pretty common at a young age because what's happening is your body is experiencing a hormonal shift, and a
Right.
lot of chemicals are being dumped into it. So they start to see strange events. Whether that's kind of them piercing into the veil. What really got me interested in this, besides it happening to myself, was I heard a podcast with Joe Rogan. I don't know if you've ever listened to him, but he had a guy, Alex Jones, on, that conspiracy guy.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, he's outlandish. Well, I listened to this 4-hour podcast, and every 10 minutes after Alex Jones would go on a rant, I would pause it And everything he said, I looked up, and it's all true. The government experiments he talks about, but he talked about seeing through the veil. And he believed that some people have this exert ability that they can pierce through the veil a little bit and see to another dimensional plane. I mean, throughout history, Egyptians, any type of like Buddhism, these all these places believed in a type of spiritual plane, that you can reach through a form of enlightenment or transcendent meditation. And I hear that, I'm like, this is what brings up the concept in Chinese religions with astral projection, being able to leave your body. It's the same concept of lucid dreaming. When you're able to lucid dream, you're able to know you're in a dream and be able to do whatever you want.
I don't remember where it was that I heard this, but it was pretty recent that I heard something about the I think it was the Egyptians believed that a dream was not so much something you experienced as something that you witnessed. Like it was sort of like when you have a dream, it's sort of like you're invited to something,
Like a dinner party.
right, like you're witnessing an event that is real rather than this is my brain processing the information of the day and blah blah blah. It was like they really believed it, and like I think that that's a really interesting concept, especially if you also believe that your loved ones are trying to tell you something through your dreams, or they're visiting you in your dreams and stuff like that.
I think it gives people also like, if it's true or not, it still gives people a sense of like reconciliation, or at least kind of brings them to a conclusion on just maybe the feelings they have left over, something they wanted to say. You know, I see the problem is when it comes to psychic abilities, it gets put in a bad light because the people that choose to abuse it and lie about it for their own intentional gain. But
Sure.
I think most people need to understand is that that's not everyone out there. You're going to find people that are in for their own thing, obviously, in anything they do. I mean,
Mhm.
throughout like anything when it comes to dreaming, the astral plane, any type of stuff, this is popular in so many religious things. I mean, from things like Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism, Jainism, like all these things, they're all influenced in religion. They're all talking about this afterlife or this experience. I think when it comes to religion, we all hit on the same concept. I feel like every religion is getting a piece of the big picture. There isn't a final conclusion.
Mhm.
We're all got an idea of what it is, this after resting place. Like when it comes to ghosts, when I used to watch the X-Files, I used to waste an hour and a half of my life watching them never find anything. But I I know like when they go to like what's it? Or the asylum, forgot what that place is called. That insane asylum. It's like most popular man, I can't believe this is escaping my head right now. It's like a giant prison.
um, oh my gosh. Do you mean the one um in I think Pennsylvania?
It was like one that was on an island.
Oh, do you mean Alcatraz?
Yes, Alcatraz. So people died there. I think a place
Mhm.
that experiences severe amount of bloodshed, a severe amount of loss, a severe amount of, just torture or suffering, I think it gets stained with the
Yeah,
memories of that person. Like I like to think, I don't know if ghosts are a thing, but I think a ghost is more like a memory if it's anything. It's a
right,
type of
yeah.
imprinting onto a place. I mean, I've talked to like a couple of my buddies that do paranormal podcasts. I'll have to point them your way, and they'll play you evidence. Like he played for me one time. He was in this like near these train tracks, and he had a video, and there was no one else there, and all you hear is this woman. Like he had to slow it down and clear up the audio a little bit, but it just goes, "Listen." Like really loud,
My
and he played it for me. I
goodness.
was like, "Yo," and he was like, "Did you hear it?" It was a woman like screaming. I was like, "Dude, she said listen." He's like,
Mhm.
"What?" And he goes, I'm like, "Dude, she said listen." And like I know people that like out of the fun concept of it, like, let's go see what these people are so scared of. They go and stay at like abandoned places, like Pennsylvania. The one you were probably talking about was Penhurst, that asylum. There
Yeah.
were people. I know someone that went there and stayed the night there at night, like on like
No.
in October, like the one of the worst months. And he was like, I didn't really hear anything, but there was some like weird noises we kind of couldn't explain. And then like as I was talking to him more and more about it, he keeps like uncovering more stuff. I'm like, dude, are you just trying to like say that it doesn't exist, but you know it does? He's like, well, I mean, I did see some stuff I couldn't explain. And I'm like, all right then, like there's something out there. There's always a mystery. This is why
Mhm.
Bigfoot, these are why ghosts are a thing. I mean, I remember watching the movie Amityville Horror. One of my that's a crazy, insane movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's places that have been known to hear the screams and the types of emotions and feelings that have been caused onto that place that end up getting stained on the walls. I mean, this is probably what fascinates you about haunted buildings is the fact
Oh,
that there's
yeah,
like a
definitely.
story behind each ghost.
For sure. Like, growing up, I at one point lived in a really old house, and I think it was built in the very early 1920s, and it was right across the street from the big cemetery in our town, and it had like the city founders in the cemetery, and it was it had some newer graves, but most of the graves were really old, and we lived right across the street from it. Like it was in my front yard, basically. So I lived in this really old house, and then we were right across the road from this really old cemetery. So, I mean, a lot of my childhood was and early teenager time was spent like in really old places and looking at abandoned buildings and looking at like old tombs and seeing, is this a haunted place? Who used to live here? And like looking up, the people that lived in the house before us and that kind of stuff, and just trying to find out things and looking for secret stuff in the basement, and that whole thing. And
Discovering the mystery.
yeah, yeah. And that's just always been of interest to me. When I was really young, I lived in a trailer park. I grew up super poor, and we lived in a trailer park, and there was an abandoned shack that me and my friends used to go play in, and we weren't supposed to play in it, but we did. And we we would like just explore stuff and see what we could find, and we would find like kittens and snakes and all that kind of stuff. And one day there was this trailer that burnt to the ground, and um, the rumor was that one of the members of the family had died in the trailer as it burned. It turned out not to be true, but we all believed it because we were little kids. And so nobody wanted to go explore it but me. And I was like, I'm going to go explore this. Whether you guys are going to come with me or not, I don't care. I'm going because I want to see like what happened. And this older boy that we played with ended up going with me because he was like, I can't let you go by yourself. Because I was like 8 years old and he was maybe 12. And he was like, I'm going to go with you. And then sure enough, like we started exploring this burned out trailer and we were forbidden to go over there. So my brother ran home to tattle on me. And my dad ended up coming and getting me out of the burned up trailer because he was afraid that we were going to fall through the floor or like get into some snakes or something. And when we came out of the burned up trailer, we were just covered. Me and this other little boy were covered in like black soot from top to
Oh
bottom.
my god.
We were filthy. Our clothes were ruined, and we were like grounded from going outside to play for weeks. We were in so much trouble because it was dangerous, but we didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't know going into that room that someone had died in there. I just was doing my job.
I
I
just don't understand why they didn't put up a note or some tape or something.
Because as soon as they pulled the body out, they didn't expect me to be right there getting
Oh,
ready to like, I didn't see it get
you
dragged
were on
out.
top of your job. That's
Yeah,
what it was.
that's the problem. Like, that's the thing. I try and get all my stuff done as soon as it's like as soon as it pops up, so I don't have to worry about it later. I don't have to be called for it. So
Mhm.
as soon as it was like they didn't even think to put up anything yet, and then I was like there like not even a minute after they kind of went away on a different elevator, and I came in,
Mhm.
I guess, completely just didn't even see them. And this brings me to a question I want to ask: have you ever
Okay.
seen any type of ghosts?
Oh, yeah.
Explain
Oh,
to me one
yes.
of your most impactful situations.
Okay. Well, in the house I was telling you about, that was across the street from the cemetery. I was talking on the phone to one of my friends, and I was just sort of sitting on my bed and just looking at the other wall, and it had a window in it. And I was on the second floor of my house, and we were on a really steep hill. And I was just staring sort of at the window, just kind of looking around like you do when you're on the phone. And I saw a face, a man's face, looking dead at me in the window. But it was the most horrifying face I have ever seen in my life. If I could draw, I would draw it, because I, to this day, cannot get that face out of my mind. It was so scary and gruesome, and just, it was like a dead face. And it was like really sunken in cheeks, and like not completely bald, but like with almost bald with like really wispy hair, and like really sunken like eyes, like really deep bags under his eyes, and just so scary. And he had his mouth open, and he had most of his teeth were gone, and he was just staring at me, not in a malicious way, but more in like a curious way. But he had his mouth open staring, and he had his eyes really wide open, and probably it seemed more wide open because of how sunken they were, and just the whole sunken cheeks and everything of the of his appearance scared me, because it was just a gruesome, like it was clearly a dead face. So I screamed while I was on the phone with my friend, and she thought that something had happened to me, like something bad had happened to me. And my parents came running in my room because I screamed bloody murder, and I was like, "There's somebody in my window!" And they came running in my room, and my dad went outside and like looked to see if there was a ladder up against the the house or whatever, to see if somebody was playing a trick on me, or something, because I was a teenager. And he was like, this must be one of her teenage friends playing tricks on her, or a prank or something. And he like went to go see if there was a ladder or a car or something, where to indicate that some human person had been there. And to this day, my parents, they don't believe me, but I know that I saw a face in my window, and I never forgot it. And I, oh my goodness, like that face still scares me. But I think it must have been somebody from the graveyard or something, who was just, because it was right after we first moved in, and the house had been empty for a real long time. So I just kind of think maybe it was somebody who was curious. Um, but I didn't have any more issues in that house. But my my mom used to hear voices all the time in that house, and my brother used to hear music, and we had phantom smells in that house all the time.
Mm.
So, but I don't think there was anything bad in that house, but there was definitely something weird.
I When I was a kid, if you have a computer, or not a computer near you, but if you have a way to look at the internet, if you look up the Atlantic Hotel, it's this old style hotel in Berlin, Maryland, and this is where my mom used to work at. We lived around like down the street. So when I was a kid and I'd be homesick from school, she'd just take me to work with her, and it's at a hotel, so I can just lie down and watch TV. I don't. She doesn't
Right.
have. She can just check on me up in one of the rooms or something. And I remember lying down, watching TV and watching Scooby Doo. It was the Dracula episode where they had like this band Earth, Wind, and Fire on there or something.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and it was like that was the only thing that really stuck out in detail. But I remember this woman coming by in this old style clothing, and I figured we're at older hotels, so probably the housekeeping is wearing like kind of housekeeping old style clothing, and just to kind of give it like the theme of the old presence of the Atlantic Hotel. And then so I'm sitting there talking to this African American woman. I'm like, "How you doing?" Like, and she's like, "What's your name?" And like talk to me, ask me a bunch of questions. And I'm like, "Yeah, I just seemed like a really nice person." I figured she knew my mom. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just homesick from school, just like kind of, watching some cartoons and stuff. I'm a little hungry." And she's like, "Would you like me to get you a sandwich?" And I said, I can get it myself. Thank you, though. I really appreciate it." And then she goes, "Well, I'm gonna stop by in a little bit." And I said, "Okay." And then she walked away, and I went down the hall, and like I think like a minute after I gave her time to kind of walk and do her rounds, and I kind of went out in the hall, and I was like, "Where'd she go?" And I went down and told my mom, I was like, "Yeah, I just ran into this really nice woman upstairs." She was like, and I explained what she looked like, and my mom's just staring at me.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then my aunt's right beside her looking at me. And I'm like, what I say? Was I not supposed to talk to people? And she was like, "You don't understand. Like, there's no one that wears that attire here. They all wear retro, like new clothing. They wear like a green shirt or something, not what you're explaining. You're explaining like some type of old style, like hotel type cleaning thing." I'm like, "Well, what do
Oh,
you mean?" And the hotel was built in 1890 something. So I'm sitting there like, "Oh, hold on a second." She just offered me a sandwich. And I'm like, I still don't even know if this day if she's messing with me. But I've heard so many people talk about seeing ghosts in that building. I'm like, man, it makes sense that I would have been a little child. It seems
you
like
almost ate a ghost sandwich.
yeah, it's like wouldn't that have been awesome? That would have
Oh
been
my
I would
gosh.
have that on my resume over my freaking degree.
Oh my gosh. That
I
would
ate
be
a
cool.
ghost sandwich. I wonder if I would be able to bite through it. And if
Hmm.
does she cut the bread in half? Does she cut the crust off? I don't know. But like
For a little kid, maybe she would do like cookie cutters and cut off the crusts.
whoa, I didn't
Get
even know
like
you
a
could
little
use cookie
star.
cutters to do that.
Oh yeah, I do that for my little girl all the time.
See, ghosts are caring deep down. They just want help.
They are.
I talk about like the weirdest thing when anybody talks about who or the ability to see ghosts, it's always present in young children. And I feel like ghosts are more comfortable talking to the kids because on the concept of their minds are not completely one-sided. That happens when you become older. Becomes broken. Their creativity's still new. Like their hopes are still high. And I think that's true. I mean, that explains why so many accounts come from young children seeing like an imaginary friend. Who's to say it's an imaginary friend or a ghost?
Yeah, I wonder about that too. I've always kind of been wondering if my dad watches over my daughter or if he's ever like tried to reach out to her or communicate with her or anything because he passed away before she was born and she's never met him, but she talks to me about him a lot and asks me questions about him and stuff. So that makes me wonder like if she's seen him, which now she's getting older and she's starting to sort of, well, mom, ghosts aren't real and this isn't real and that's not real. Like that's she's sort of in the phase of this is real, that's not real. This is real, that's not real. And I think that she's beyond the age to where if he did want to reach out to her and try to communicate with her, it would probably be too late or she would be afraid. But when she was really little, like a baby, she used to wake up a lot in the night and act like she was trying to reach something from her crib. And I always sort of thought, oh, she's trying to get her toy or she sees, headlights in the window or something like that that she's trying to get. But every once in a while, I think, like, what if my dad was talking to her, or what if he was watching over her and making sure she was safe in her crib or whatever? But that could be wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah, people talk about vengeful spirits, but nobody ever talks about the ones that are just trying to give us advice to get better our own lives. Like, there's a
Mhm.
lot of them that seem like they have to break through the veil just to kind of help somebody out. Like, is that true? Like I said, I don't know because I haven't experienced something so impactful like that. At least that I am at this age now able to understand, you know. But I mean, there's so many things out there still left to understand about the world and still about the human brain. It boggles my mind that anybody could just immediately say that these types of things don't exist when we don't even know what exists.
Yeah. I have a dream about my dad every night almost. And we were really, really close when he was alive. And I wonder sometimes if it's just me dreaming and like wishing we still had that close connection, or if it's something from him so that we can still be close, even though he's not here anymore. Like, because it, all of my dreams that I have of him are of us doing things as a family or us experiencing something nice together. I hardly ever have a bad dream that involves him. And usually it's something like we all went on a picnic together, or we went on a trip to the beach, or we went to a museum. But what's really strange is we never did that type of stuff when we were alive. And that's kind of what makes me think, like, is this something that he is sending me from beyond, because maybe he wishes that we did do that type of stuff as a family, or maybe he's trying to still like be involved from beyond or whatever. I don't know, but it's it's something to think about. I hear a lot of people talk about having dreams of somebody deceased where it feels real and it feels like it's from a memory, or it feels like the person is trying to tell them something, and they feel the presence of the person, they feel the warmth of that person, or they can smell that person's perfume or whatever. And it's so hard to just chalk it up to, well, you're just processing your grief,
Yeah,
you know?
sometimes things get a little bit unexplanatory. You're just wondering, like, that can't be that. That there's no way. There's some things you literally it leaves you gasping. I think that some people that believe like, oh, that's not true. That thing didn't happen. It's like maybe it didn't happen to you yet. Maybe you haven't experienced it. That's why I tell people that believe in like religions and stuff, and I tell them just because I don't believe in it, but I understand where you had an experience and you turn to that. Like I've seen it. That's why I try and be an open minded as possible. Doesn't mean I believe everything, but I try and give everything the benefit of the doubt because there's so much just by talking to so many people out in the world, so many unique conversations I've been having that I learned that I don't know a damn thing about the world. I don't know a damn thing about anything. And I'm like, that just makes me want to keep doing this more and more because the more I start figuring out like learning new stuff every single day, I start being more open minded, more open to like maybe I just haven't learned or experienced that yet. And it's definitely changed me as a person. It's something impactful. I think we all need to have our little relaxation modes. And like for you, being able to focus on like paranormal and like these types of stuff, and even having the name Heinous Hotels. Like, immediately I saw that. I'm like, I'm literally at work at my work at a
At a
hotel, and
Heinous
and
Hotel.
I see Heinous Hotels. I'm like, all right, is this like horrible hotel stories? Like I can go off about some of them.
I
But
love I love like the craziest things, like things that you wouldn't think would happen, because when you check into a hotel, you're thinking I'm on a vacation or I'm on this work trip, and this hotel room is for me to sleep in, maybe have a couple of meals, and that's it. That's what this hotel room is for. Or if you're on a vacation, you're like, I'm going to relax. I'm going to have a bath. I'm going to, this is my home away from home. And you are supposed to feel safe. You're supposed to feel comfortable. But when the unexpected happens, it's sort of like somebody coming into your home because when because you expect to feel safe and secure in your hotel room because there's a lock on the door. You paid for the room because you want that safety of a home away from home, and you want that comfort. So if something crazy happens to you, maybe you experience a paranormal event, or somebody breaks into your hotel room and steals your stuff, or there's a crime event in your room or whatever, you think, "Oh my god, where am I safe at?"
There's the problem is you're not safe in your own house either. The fact is
Exactly.
your house can fall on you. This is what I try and tell people. Like, if
Mhm.
you try and live a life of comfortability thinking you'll always be safe inside of your home, it's not true. You can actually more accidents happen in the home, you know?
That's very true, yeah.
You have to understand that if you're just going to try and live a life of comfortability, you're not going to end up being happy playing it safe all the time. Sometimes you have to take a risk. Sometimes you have to know what it's like to not have a job. Sometimes you have to know these things. You have to experience this stuff because it's only going to in turn turn you into a better person.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I like to explore these stories is because even when you think that you're safe, sometimes you're not, but you might learn something from the experience. You might get a cool story out of it, if nothing else. But I think that when 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 what I find fascinating um about the stories is that it mostly the true ones, like especially with true crime and stuff, it involves real people, it involves real emotions and real feelings, and there's residual like after effects, like there's families that are impacted by crime, entire generations of people that are impacted by crime. So I like to be sympathetic to those people while still telling the story as accurately as I can, and exploring the emotions that are attached to that. Like, this person experienced this horrible thing, but now there's this sensationalist story that brings people to this hotel year after year or whatever. Sort of,
Yeah, it's like capitalizing it like the Roswell incident. Like all the people down in Roswell, New Mexico now have like they have an alien themed McDonald's down there. They
yeah.
capitalized on aliens. That's what places do because it brings attention. It's all about trying to get someone to experience something or at least a little bit of a mystery in their life because
Yeah.
honestly, most lives they do tend to be a little bit boring.
Yeah. I think for some people it's a safe way to experience something strange is, well, I'm going to go to this hotel where this crazy thing happened, but the crazy thing has already happened. So no crazy thing is going to happen to me, but I still get a little bit of the experience because I was there.
I definitely think so. Look, I want to give you here a minute at the end to promote your podcast,
Hmm.
Jordan, because
Thank
this
you.
is you got a really cool like thing going on here. I mean, honestly, I don't see a lot of people focusing on like the little mystery stuff. I mean, a lot of people do conspiracy theories, but no one ever really dives into like true crime like, and all that kind of paranormal stuff.
Well, M I like to focus on the travel aspect. Usually, when I talk about the hotel, I talk about, maybe the famous people that visited, the urban legends that surround the place, some history about the town. If there was a true crime event there, I like to cover that, and then I like to cover the ghosts or any paranormal activity that people report, and then later on I like to talk about what it's like to stay in the hotel, so that if anybody listening wants to visit, they'll know what to expect. And I always read some reviews from like TripAdvisor or Yelp or whatever, so that I can get people's real story. And that's where most of what I, in my opinion, think is the most interesting, because a lot of people will just write a review and be like, uh, I went to this place and I had somebody open my shower curtain and I was so scared. Or I saw a silhouette behind the door, or I saw a shadow, or there was somebody knocking on my door and I opened the door and there was no one there. I love that kind of stuff because that's not always what you find when you're looking on like Wikipedia or when you're looking at the hotel's website. It depends on whether or not the hotel embraces the paranormal or true crime or whatever the salacious thing is. And some hotels try to gloss over that and make it sound like there nothing out of the ordinary would ever happen here. And some hotels are like, yeah, everything crazy is here. So it's sort of interesting to see like whether or not some of the stories are maybe made up by the hotel, and maybe they're real, maybe they're not, but it's just interesting to like see what do real people think. I try not to interject too much of my personal opinion, but I d- it does leak through on some episodes for sure, but um most of my interest comes from real people's stories and not just whatever the hotel or whatever people who run the place try to put out there, because you just can't know when somebody has an invested interest in making the hotel sound like.
Well, it's a great interpretation to kind of make it into your own way. Like you have
Mhm.
to interpret things yourself. You can't just take someone's review off something. If a restaurant says it sucks, you have to go experience that yourself. Don't live your life off
Exactly.
someone else's thoughts and feelings because you have different taste buds. You have different
Mhm.
experience than somebody.
Yeah. I think that gives more of a well-rounded thing, because when you have reviews from people and then when you also have the story from the hotel or from Wikipedia or from whatever website, um, you get more you get you get more opinions, and you get more of a spectrum to see, and that way the listener can decide, is this place haunted? Do I want to visit there on my next trip? I don't know.
Yeah, it's all about making your own interpretations of things.
Mhm.
Well, Jordan, it's been awesome talking to you, and thank you so much
Thank
for doing the
you.
podcast.
I sure do appreciate it.
I love your accent, by the way.
Thank you.
I was going to say in the beginning, but I'm glad I got to end it with that.
Oh my goodness.